We've got a charged atmosphere for two rivals in the East Division. It's the Moonshine Throwdown. Marshall and Western Kentucky.
Intercepted by Key, and Key has one man and beat. A nice cut move. Edwards can't get him. Key takes it all the way. A pick six for Devin Key.
Here comes Talik Keaton to the sideline midfield. He's to the 40, gets a block, and he is gone! Touchdown, Marshall!
So please join me in welcoming the 21st head coach in WKU football history, Tyson Helton.
And Marshall's going to finish the year 9-4 and champions of the 2018 Gasparilla Bowl, the sixth consecutive bowl win for the Marshall Thundering Herd.
Welcome back to the Moonshine Throwdown podcast. Finally, guys, a week that sees our squads go 2-0 for the first time in quite a while. We're going to start off in Bowling Green, Kentucky this week because, hey, Steven can join the broadcast on time. So it must have been a nice laid-back day for Moff to make it here on time. So good to have him kick things off with us. I mean, Western deserves to lead the show off. I mean, they are 4-2 overall, first place in Conference USA, off of a very, very, very impressive win. The scoreboard, you look at the scoreboard and you go 17-8. What's impressive about that? But if you watch the game, it was very impressive win over Army. There's no doubt. So Army comes into the game a 4.5 point favorite, and like I just said, Tops get the win 17-8. Those four indicators that we always talk about, total yards, time of possession, first downs, and turnovers, this is one of those games that says, yep, Western won that game because despite turnovers being even, nobody turned the ball over. Western swept the other three categories. They outgained Army 365 to 208. Yeah, that's right, Army, 208 total yards all day long. Time of possession, hold your breath on this one. Tops 38 minutes, 7 seconds. Army just 21 minutes and 53 seconds. Gee-ma-knee. And first downs, continue to hold your breath. 26 for the Tops, just 10 first downs for Army in this entire game. Good Lord. Topper defense holds Army to 137 rushing yards as a team on 36 carries. They went just 3 of 11 on third down, while the Tops went 10 of 17. I mean, the Tops themselves rushed for 225 yards on 51 carries. You can tell that this was definitely going to be a ball control game plan. I mean, 51 rush attempts. But 16 minutes, plus 16 minutes in time of possession, the Tops held the ball for an entire quarter and then some longer than Army. I mean, I don't care how you slice it. I can look past the scoreboard. I was completely wrong about this game. And I'm not afraid to admit it. Yeah, a lot of people let me have it. I know Steven's been waiting for tonight to let me have it a little bit. I said it was going to be 31-30, and boy, was I wrong. 17-8. This was just an utter dominating performance by Western Kentucky all the way around. I mean, it didn't necessarily translate to points, but we've seen that a lot this season out of both of these teams. I mean, yardage, time of possession, domination, defensive domination. Steve, before I get into stats, I mean, you got to like this one. I said going in, this is one that would raise the perception of Conference USA as a whole, and I think it does, even though Army's a little up and down this year. They've been a good squad over the past 2, 3, 4 years. So this is one of those perception-raising games for the Hilltopper program after a couple of dismal seasons and one for the conference. So, dude, relive Army because this was a good one.
Yeah, man. Just I got to start with the pregame environment. Me and the wife got to make it out, hang out with the Joes, the Keys, the Wits, hanging out at the parents' tailgate. Spend some good quality time with some good quality people. So, thanks to them. I know they listen, so big shout out to them for inviting us and having us as always. Army brought a good crowd, man. There was a lot of people wearing Army gear. Western fans showed a lot of respect to having them on campus. Pre-game festivities, I mean, they had the Black Daggers parachute the game ball into the stadium, which there's pretty good film from both the field level and from them jumping out of the plane, and even one of the parachute guys had a GoPro or something bringing the ball down to the field. So that was awesome. But then they had 2 Apache helicopters fly over the field right before kickoff after the national anthem. Then at halftime, there were probably 50 or so new members of the Army sworn in right on the field, which was just another awesome kind of moment. Just a really, really patriotic, respectful day. Obviously, we came in to win the game, and we knew that, what we were going to have to do to get this win. And pretty much, we out-armied Army, I had high expectations. I knew our defense was good. I didn't expect that we'd pitch a shutout till a minute 41 left in the ball game. That was basically a shutout game. We gave up a late touchdown when Army was basically out of the game and had to drop back and pass every game. It kind of looked like they should have done that all game if you watched the end, because they were, dinking and dunking, moving the ball down the field. But a lot of respect to them. Great opponent, great environment. Really love the game. Nowhere near 31-30. Got to throw that in, man. Nowhere near 31-30. We didn't score 30 points. We left a lot of points on the field. But we did what we needed to do to win the game. We controlled the ball. We didn't turn it over. And just our rushing game, our offensive line, our defense, just all really starting to click. Even though the points didn't blow anybody away, man, I still think this team has a lot of potential. And we're ready to make some noise in Conference USA. Let's go.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about it. I get exactly what you're saying when you say you out-armied Army. That's not a disrespectful thing. What you did was you controlled the clock and you ran the ball, and that's their game. That is their bread and butter. Nobody will argue against that. They weren't able to do it. Western was able to do it. And I've always heard, just a side note from what you say pregame, I've always heard that Army likes to play games in areas where there are a concentration of military. And, right up the road, E-Town is a big military town. And Fort Knox is up there, right? That's close.
Fort Knox and Fort Campbell are pretty close by, kind of in between. So, definitely, a good contingent of Army folks that have ties probably to both schools were in attendance. So, man, it was just an awesome sight, man. I really enjoyed the environment.
I thought it was also an extra cool touch that Tops went with the patriotic white helmet. Nice little touch, show of respect. It's one of those fine details that is just a classy move. And you're right. You went in to win the game. You weren't going to lay down for anybody. And again, it sounds like a broken record, but this defense proved it another week that they are quite possibly one of the finest in the conference, if not the finest. And of course, I tweeted it out later in the week when stats came out, 17th in total defense in the country, ladies and gentlemen. So we said it in the pregame, if they get, up to that top 20-ish level, can we start calling them the Big Red Machine? And I'm doing it. I don't care what anybody says. There's number 17 in the country. That's nothing to sneeze at. I don't care who's on your schedule. You still got to show up and make the plays. So for all those haters that say, look at their schedule. Yeah, so what? You still got to go make the tackles. You still got to get the penetration. You still got to play the coverage and deflect the passes and whatever. And the Toppers are doing this week in and week out. So you can hate on them all you want. The defense is real. The defense is legit. Herd fans are going to find out about it here in a couple of weeks, so I hope you're prepped and ready for probably some of the most fierce pass rushers you've seen come in Josie Edwards Stadium in a while, at least as far as Conference USA teams go. There's some real athletes on this defense. So let's talk stats. Ty Story, leading passer, goes all the way again. Didn't see another quarterback in the game as far as I could tell. I lost my Wi-Fi connection late in the game as we were texting, and I wasn't able to see the end of it. So 21 out of 30, another high percentage week for Ty Story. Only 140 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions, 73 on the QBR rating, and 17 carries for 62 yards. He's just getting it done. I mean, nothing's blowing you away, but boy, he's just getting it done. Gage Walker over 100 again for another week, 25 carries, 132 yards, good for 5.3 yards a carry. No receiver really had a big game. Lucky Jackson, Jock Sloan, both 5 catches apiece. Lucky goes for 45 yards, Sloan 39 yards. Defensively, three guys, each 7 tackles. Kyle Bailey, Antoine Kincaid, and D'Angelo Malone, all 7 tackles apiece. Bailey 5 solo, Kincaid 4 solo, Malone 3 solo. Bailey and Malone each get a quarterback hurry, and then Malone also gets a tackle for loss. This was one of those games where quarterback sacks were not really going to happen. You said they didn't start passing until right at the end of the game, and I think there was only like 12 or 16 total pass attempts or something like that. So doesn't surprise me that there wasn't a sack made by this defense. Corey Munson, a decent game, I guess, 1 out of 2 on field goals, 2 of 2 on extra points. So all that being said, let's talk about some grades, Steve. How about Ty Story as he keeps progressing as a topper QB?
Ty Story effectively kind of game managed this game. Didn't seem like they were worried too much about opening up the playbook and taking big shots down the field. Worried about running up the score, kind of, I guess, knowing what kind of game plan they were going against. Wasn't really necessary. Get some points on the board, let the defense do what they do. And he just pretty much just had to not make any mistakes. He didn't put any balls in a danger zone, none hit the ground, fumble-wise, no interceptions. So I give Ty Story a solid B+. I mean, good game. Really showed he's got good wheels on him. Pretty much any time he wanted to, he could take off and pick up those 3rd and short, 2nd and short first downs. So good game for Ty, continuing to grow and develop. And, if that continues into the meat of CSA play now, big things coming.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was getting ready to say. The development is coming along, and there's really no chances being taken, unnecessary chances, but you are starting to get into the meat of the schedule. I mean, Charlotte is really the last, I don't want to call it a gimme game because there's not really a gimme game. You never really know with this crazy conference, but Charlotte is the closest thing you've got to a gimme before you start to run the gauntlet a little bit. You go to Huntington, then you got FAU coming to Bowling Green. Then you got another non-con game breaking up the schedule. And then to me, the toughest game left, period, right now is Southern Miss. And you got to go to Hattiesburg. That could be a Conference USA Championship game preview. A lot of folks are still not believing in Western Kentucky. Okay, whatever. But that could be potentially a Conference USA Championship preview 2 weeks before the game will be played. So nothing against Ty Story. I think he's doing a good job, but, might want to crank it up just a little bit. We'll see. He may have to be the difference maker in one of these games as you start the gauntlet there. So how about offensively as a whole? I mean, we talked about 225 rushing yards as a team. Story game managing his way to a victory. I mean, as long as the dubs keep piling up, what can you say?
Yeah, I'm going to give the offense a B+. I mean, there were still a few missed opportunities, some drop balls, just stuff that wasn't executed, 100% on point, but still, nothing that shot us in the foot in a close game. So, good result, got a victory, didn't hurt ourselves in any way, shape, or form, did what the coaching staff set out to do, got enough points to win. So, B+ for the offensive guys as well.
And now we come to defense, and you do a great job of being very subjective and being fair. And I wonder if you start comparing the defense against themselves, you know what I'm saying? Like, well, I have a certain expectation now. They didn't live up to it this week, or they did, or they surpassed it this week. But I'm interested to see how you continue to grade the defense as the season goes along, because they keep turning in great performances. So what about this week against Army?
Yeah, I mean, the defense, I'm just going to give an A+ this week. I mean, not like an A++ or anything like that. I mean, they showed up. They were stopping the run. They were on their assignments. They were disciplined. Guys were keeping pressure up the middle. If they were bouncing outside, they had nowhere to go. I think there was only really one big run given up, and the touchdown that came with 1:41. A little bit of a broken coverage, kind of a fade play to the end zone, kind of a sideline corner route. But other than that, the defense was great. Just pressure on the ball, run defense. If they keep playing that way, I mean, we've kind of said it all along. This start has been a little bit surprise, although the defense being the strength has not been a surprise. They're kind of exceeding the expectations that even I had coming in, with how stout they've been. The secondary's been disciplined, and the front four, front seven, include the linebackers, whatever, have just been phenomenal. I mean, you just can't say enough good things. The whole defensive side got the game ball. I'd say an A+ when you hold Army to, I think it was, half their rushing average on normal. I think they're over 300 yards rushing a game generally. And, when you almost double their time of possession, I mean, yeah, you're doing awesome. I mean, this game as a whole was just an awesome victory. Definitely A+ for the defense, man. They stepped up.
It's been a while since I've seen a plus a quarter and then some in time of possession differential. That's pretty amazing. So how about special teams?
Yeah, I mean, special teams weren't asked to do a lot. Missed a field goal like you mentioned earlier. It was one of those that was just not, I don't know. It just seems like Munson is better straight on right now than he is kicking from the hashes. So obviously you'd like to see that improve if it was needed in a close game, but this wasn't that by any means. So I'm going to give special teams a B. Nothing really bad, nothing that hurt us. So just a B for special teams.
Yeah, not bad. I mean, I did see that Haggerty was almost up at 50 yards a punt, but he only had to punt twice. But still, nice average there. So how about another not another. How about a coaching grade this week? I was going to say another seemingly solid coached game.
Yeah, the coaches, I give them an A. I mean, it's October, and we've already surpassed our win total from last year, which I don't know if that says more about last year or this year, but, a lot of holdovers from last year's team, virtually the same personnel, just better coaching, getting it done on offense, no head-scratching play calls or decisions to go for it on fourth down. And then the defensive staff is just, taking it up a notch, definitely flexing their muscle on that side of the ball. So I give the coaching staff an A.
Yeah. They seem to make pretty much making all the right calls all the time right now. It's pretty fun to watch. And you say, I don't know if it says more about last season or this season. I'm going to say it says more about this season. Because a lot of the same guys were on the roster last season that are on here now, and it speaks to the way that they're being coached up and the way they're being utilized and the way things are getting played out. So early on in the Helton era, this is looking like it was a really, really good move by the Tops. Overall, this week against Army, got to be happy.
Yeah, overall, going with an A. I mean, even though some naysayers on the Twitter have tried to downplay this victory and say Army's not very good. It's always going to be a good victory to beat them. I mean, they're not a terrible team. They've had several solid seasons back to back to back. Maybe they're inconsistent this year, but if you're not a good team, a good, solid, well-coached team, they're going to come in and impose their will on you because of what they do with their triple option rushing attack. They're just going to grind you to a pulp if you're not disciplined and have a good game plan, which we brought all those things to the table, did what we wanted to do, stop them from doing what they wanted to do, and, really had an easy victory that never really felt like it was a doubt, even though the final score wasn't a huge margin. You shut them out for, all but a minute 41 of the game. Then they had to go with an onside kick that we recovered, again, never in jeopardy. Awesome victory, awesome environment, just a good game day overall in Bowling Green. So definitely an A overall for that victory.
Yeah, things looking great in Bowling Green right about now. So here's the big question each week. So what do we know about these Toppers after 6 games now?
Well, we know that this defense is dominant. Right now they're number 1 in conference play and points against, allowing the fewest points. I think they're number 2 overall defense, in all games played and points allowed. Number 2 only to UAB, about 20 or so points. So the defense is going to be the anchor. The offense, if you go back to some of the earlier games where it was sloppy and inconsistent and just not executing well, You can see that side getting cleaned up. You can see that there's a lot of confidence in Gage Walker. The offensive line is pushing and creating holes for him. Ty Story is getting more confident and can use his legs, which is going to make the defense have to be a little bit more honest. And then he can sling the ball a little bit too. He hasn't had too much. But I feel like as the season goes on, we're going to see him put up a big game on somebody. And like you said, he needs to step up and lead us to victory. I really feel like that game that's coming real soon. I thought it might be this game. It wasn't necessary. It didn't have to happen. We didn't force that issue. But I love that the guys, as soon as this game was over, they were already talking about Charlotte and what they did to us last year. It's on their minds. It's on the calendar. It's circled. This is kind of a revenge tour. And we know that eventually that offense is going to step up. And if it happens this week, it's homecoming. That'd be a great week for it to happen. So we know that this defense is going to lead the squad, but the offense is going to tell us how far we go.
Yeah, you're right. I don't want to jump too far ahead, but we don't really hope that Story doesn't break out until this game. But what personally for him, what a great game to break out here in about a month when you guys travel down and play Arkansas. And that one would be sweet for him. Maybe you won't need it until then, which would be fine. But that would personally probably for him be a great game for him to have a ball out day in a Topper uniform. So here's what I know about Western Kentucky. In addition to everything that you just said, which I agree with, I know that the Tops are 4-2. I know that the Tops are 3-0 in conference. I know that you stole my 1 point, is which they surpassed the win total from 2018, and it only took 6 weeks or 7 weeks, counting the bye week. And here's the big one. Western Kentucky could be bowl eligible before November, ladies and gentlemen. They'll play 3 more games they'll play 2 more games and just after November. The FAU game will be, they could be. They're 4 wins. Yeah, they could be bowl eligible before November if they get the win against Charlotte and then go to Huntington and get the win over Marshall. That's something I don't think any of us thought coming into the season, that you would be staring at bowl eligibility before the beginning of November. That's what I know about the Tops, and it's great. So, Steve, you mentioned Charlotte. You mentioned it's homecoming. We're going to transition right into this Charlotte preview. And it's always nice to have a beatable opponent on homecoming. Not so sure if Marshall scheduled homecoming as easily as Western did this year, but we'll get into that in a couple of weeks. Charlotte coming to town for a Decades of Spirit themed homecoming for Western Kentucky. Power Index loves Western, 78.2% chance to win. Tops currently minus 8.5 points. All-time series, 1-1. Both teams have won the game at home. So you like to think that Western Kentucky will hold serve and continue to win in Bowling Green, since Charlotte stole one. Well, they didn't steal one. They won in convincing fashion last year, 40-14. But the Tops back in 2017 won 45-14 in Bowling Green. So average score of these games are pretty lopsided in favor of the home team. So we'll see if maybe this is the week that you say the Tops are going to break out. That would continue the trend of lopsided victories by the home team in this series. Charlotte's just 2-4 on the season, 0-2 in conference. They've already lost to FAU and FIU. We all know what Western did to FIU. Their only wins this year are over one win UMass, who just got obliterated by Louisiana Tech this weekend, and then 1AA squad Gardner-Webb. So Charlotte is really not that good. They do score a lot of points, but, they give up a lot of points. They're scoring just under 34 points a game, 33.7, but they're allowing 41 points a game. And this is kind of what plays into what Western's been doing well here lately. They're giving up 231 rush yards per game. The combined not the combined score, the average score of their conference games against FAU and FIU is 46.5 to 25 for Charlotte. So they're not showing very well against conference foes. That being said, let's talk about a few players to look out for, and then we'll talk about how the Toppers can win this game. Quarterback Chris Reynolds, the 5'10", 192-pound sophomore, 71 out of 117 on the season, 952 yards, 11 touchdowns through the air, just 5 picks. Running back, one of the finest in Conference USA, actually, Benny LeMay. He's been doing it for a number of years. The 5'9", 215-pound senior, 96 carries on the year, 622 yards, 5 touchdowns. Good for 6.5 yards per carry. He's a good one. A couple of wide receivers worth mentioning. Cameron Dollar, the 6'2", 188-pound sophomore, 16 catches, 269 yards, 2 touchdowns. Good for 16.8 yards per catch. And wide receiver Victor Tucker, the 5'11", 177-pound sophomore, 17 catches, 246 yards, and 3 touchdowns through the air. Good for 14.5 yards per catch. Look, it looks like other than LeMay, this is a real youth movement on this Charlotte offense, and that generally leads itself to mistakes. Now, Chris Reynolds has done a good job up to this point with 11 touchdowns versus just 5 interceptions, but I'm not sure that they have played a defense like they're getting ready to walk into. So we'll see how that goes. On defense, speaking of defense, 3 guys worth mentioning. I didn't jot down all 3, but I will tell you this. The 3 leading tacklers for Charlotte are all defensive backs. That's generally not a good thing. Marcavis Gibbs, 6'1", 193-pound senior, leading tackler, 49 tackles on the season, 25 of those solo, and just a half a sack to go along with it. Henry Segura, the 6'2", 210-pound sophomore, also a defensive back, 39 tackles on the season, 23 of those solo, 1 forced fumble, and 1 interception. And then from the linebacker spot, he's probably the best all-around defensive player, according to the stats anyway. Marquise Watts, the 6', 218-pound sophomore, just 27 tackles, 15 of those solo, but he's got 3.5 sacks and a forced fumble. So, if your defensive backs are making the bulk of your tackles, I like Gage Walker in a good game, good matchup against the Charlotte defense. So, Steve, talk to me about what you think the Toppers are going to need to do to secure this win over Charlotte. Before you say, I don't think this is going to be a tooth and nail fight. I don't think this is going to be a tough one. So I'm sure you kind of got a little bit of the same feeling, but tell me what you think the Toppers got to do.
Yeah, the team has really kind of embraced the underdog role the last few weeks. They've kind of been written off and low expectations and exceeding them now. There's even a sideline picture of them against Army, underdogs, question mark, kind of embracing that role and kind of really enjoying this revenge tour, like I've called it already, of going back and getting some victories against some teams that the last couple of years have just taken advantage of a poorly coached team. Now, like you mentioned earlier, Charlotte hurt us. It was painful to watch. I might not have even watched the whole game last year. It was that hard to watch when they just were blowing us off the field. We couldn't contain them in any way, shape, or form. We just looked lost on the field. I've been speaking to our offense being on the verge of breaking out, that big game bubbling over the surface above 30 points. It's going to happen soon. And it's homecoming. It's a defense that allows a lot of rushing yards. Given the performance and the effort we just had with Gage Walker going over 100, Ty Story near 60 yards, our offensive line, no penalties the entire game. They're really just flexing their muscle. I think this is the game that we explode on, and partially because it's, things are clicking, partially because we owe them a little payback from last year. It's going to be homecoming. I expect a solid crowd to be there. I just think it's all going to come together. The rushing attack is going to be solid. Gage Walker is going to go over 100 yards. Ty Story is going to go, 250 plus, couple touchdowns. I think Josh Simon and Ja'Cour Pearson are going to have big games. We need to control, the ball turnovers, which Ty Story's kind of proven he can do. And, if we limit all those things, our defense is going to show up. Yeah, I have no question that we're going to put pressure on the quarterback. It might not be a shutout. It might not be a blowout, but it's going to be a game which we, again, assert ourselves, do what we need to do, and beat a team that we're supposed to beat. That's just what's going to happen. That's what I see happening.
Hard not to agree with you. I mean, there was a little bit of an eyebrow raise early in the season for me as far as Charlotte went because of the amount of points they were putting up. But now the dust has kind of settled a little bit, and we said, well, we'll see where they're at when, it's time for them to play Western, and we see where they're at. They're sitting at 2-4 and 0-2 in conference, and Charlotte kind of is who we thought they were going to be. There was a little excitement early on because they got a new coach, and they're kind of trying to do a new thing. And, if they're happy in Charlotte, that's cool, but I don't think they really have much for the Toppers this week. For me, I think number one thing you're going to have to do to secure a win is you're going to have to do your best to bottle up Benny LeMay, and nobody's been able to run on this Topper defense yet. So, we'll see how well LeMay can do. And number two, just continue to ride the defense. This is the strength. It's obvious. So that's what you got to do. Number three, to me, run. That's kind of, the coach speak kind of thing. Play good defense and run the ball. But, it's simple. That's the simple game plan. Gage Walker, I believe, is going to have an absolute field day. And then last, number 4, I don't think you have to do this, but let's have a little fun. You're going to have a cushion big enough that you're going to be able to try to do something exciting. So throw in a trick play. See if you can get the crowd amped up for something on homecoming and just kind of blow the roof off the house. And, maybe you'll get that blowout win this week. So that being said, how about a 200 proof player this week? Who's your guy?
Yeah, I'm going to go with someone I haven't picked this year, someone who's had a pretty big season, albeit on not a lot of targets. I'm going to go with tight end Josh Simon. I think he's getting more targets as the season goes on. We missed him one time pretty open in this last game against Army, but I think I'm not going to be surprised if he puts up a couple of touchdowns. He's athletic. He's a monster. He's that over the middle kind of security blanket. Jakor will be stretching things on the outside. Gage pounding up the middle. I think Josh Simon going to have him a couple touchdowns. He's going to be my 200 proof player.
I mean, that's a good pick. Only 9 catches on the season for Simon, but 4 of those have gone for a touchdown. I mean, you got to like that ratio. I'm going with the guy I've been talking about all week or all episode, and that's Gage Walker. I think he's going to have his highest rushing output maybe of the season to this point. And, there's really no reason for the Toppers to go away from feeding him if it's working. But, this might be the game where they can do whatever they feel like doing on offense. And I'd like to kind of see it, really. I'd like to see the offense catch up to the defense a little bit and maybe outshine them a tad in a game. We'll see how long it takes for that to happen if it does this year. So how about a score prediction this week?
Yeah, I'm going to throw it up there. I think the defense is going to flex. I think the offense is going to finally break out. Talking about it. I think we're going to see a 31-13 Topper victory on homecoming.
I tell you what, you and I are pretty like-minded offensively. I think the defense is a little bit more stingy. Give me the Toppers in a 30-10 win, cruising to the dub and homecoming. Yeah, 30. I'm going to give you that magic number you've been longing for all season, be the Top's highest offensive output all year. And, if Army can't get to 10, then neither can Charlotte. So we'll see how it goes. Hang with us. On the other side of this break, we're going to Huntington, West Virginia to relive the Herd's victory over lowly Old Dominion. It's the Moonshine Throwdown podcast.
And Justin Haig among them as he sets himself for a 41-yard and a potential game winner. The kick is up. And they start celebrating.
It's good.
Justin Haig, a 41-yard field goal, wins it for Marshall on the road.
That is the ball game. Ladies and gentlemen, after 4 quarters of play, Ohio scored under the Herd at 24.
Unbelievable.
And as exciting as a win as that is for Marshall, it is as crushing as a defeat for the Florida Atlantic Owls.
All right, welcome back to the Moonshine Throwdown podcast. Trace is here with me now. We're going to talk about the Herds weekend that saw the Herd end that 2-game skid, get back in the left-hand column, get one in the left-hand column in the conference standings as well. Tough to call a game against Old Dominion a must-win, but Jiminy Christmas. We talked about it in the preview. If Old Dominion would have happened to have got a win, the Herd could have been staring down the barrel of some really atrocious conference games coming up. So it was good for them to get this win. Herd gets the dub 31-17 in a game they were favored by 15.5 points. They could have covered, but they kind of kneeled down on the ball there in the red zone again. The Herd's done that a couple times this season. So sorry for all you bettors out there. Maybe just stop betting on the Herd, because if Doc is in the red zone with a minute and a half to go and you need that to cover, he ain't going to cover. He's going to kneel on it and go home and get the dub. So you can't really blame him for that. Those indicators, again, this is eerily similar to the Western Army game, I got to say. Herd sweeps 3 of 4 categories. Nobody turned the ball over on either side, so that's kind of a wash. Looking at these stats from both of those games, it's pretty amazing. Herd gets 444 yards to Old Dominion's 206. Time of possession, Marshall 36 minutes even. Old Dominion just 24 minutes. Herd goes plus 12 in time of possession. First downs, 27 for the Herd, just 11 for Old Dominion. Gosh, if you guys want to go back and compare those stats, they're eerily similar. I don't want to go back and repeat them all over again, but as I wrote them down and I can look back at them quickly, that's crazy. Old Dominion, they went with a 2-quarterback approach here, Trace, and I don't know if that was such a good idea or if it was because Stone Smart was playing rather pedestrian, so to speak. He got yanked after 2 pass attempts, even though his one completion went for 23 yards. He racked up a stellar QBR rating before getting taken out, though, a whopping 1.2. Wow. Yeah, wow. Marshall racked up 8 sacks against Old Dominion, tied for second in single game all time. Behind 12 that they racked up against ODU sometime back in the 80s. I don't remember what the year was. And the Herd as a team rushed for 236 yards. That's a recipe for success. So, Trace, look, I'm not going to do stats right now. I want you to relive a victory. Let's talk about some things that went right. Let's talk about some things that went wrong. Well, let's see. Let's talk about some things that went right. Let's talk about some things we got to get fixed, okay? So have at it. Let's relive a little bit of Old Dominion. I know it's got to feel good to get off the schneid.
Yeah, it was a good win. Any win's a good win, especially when you had just dropped 2 in a row, 2 pretty embarrassing losses. So this was easily a must win. You said it's hard to call a game against Old Dominion a must win, but I'll tell you this: if Marshall would have lost this game 2-4, I in my opinion, the season would have been over, because I think they would have probably lost several more games, possibly in a row even. So this was a must win. They got some things fixed, to, jokingly what we always say about, we got to get that fixed. Well, they got some things fixed in this game. Offense actually put up points. They scored in the red zone. Isaiah Green played a much better game than he had been playing. The defense played better than it had been playing. So, overall, this really was a solid win. It didn't leave, the best taste in my mouth, honestly, just because, I know, I was thinking at the end of the day, yeah, it's still Old Dominion, and it's not that big of a, thing, but it was a must-win game, and there were definitely good things to take away that they can build on. Definitely things that I think that they need to keep going with if they want to keep it, progressing in the conference and have a chance to win the East and all that good stuff. So their margin for error is pretty thin in the East right now, so that's a good start, getting a win like that. Hopefully they can keep it going now, but there's a lot of things about this game that were good, but there were also a couple pretty bad things, which I'll touch on here later with grades. But yeah, good win.
Yeah, really good win. There are people that are always going to gripe no matter how they'll say, well, you should have won by more, whatever. Yeah. But at the end of the day, it's all about getting them in the left-hand column. And when you're hurting, when you're on a skid, who gives a crap if you win by 1 or 100? A dub's a dub. At the end of the day, at the end of the season, when you go back and you're counting up your wins and see if you made it to bowl eligibility, nobody's going to care that you won by a point to Old Dominion. But this was a very good offensive showing, a really good defensive showing as well. I mean, you tie the second all-time single-game sack record in Herd history. That's a pretty good day. And, we'll get to an individual effort here in a minute when I talk about stats that is just mind-blowing.
Unreal.
But let's start off with the offensive stats. Isaiah Green, solid game, Trace. He's needed this. He really needed this. 19 out of 31. That's a solid completion percentage. 175 yards doesn't blow you away, but that's very game manager-esque, as we steal a term from Steven using on Ty's story. 1 touchdown through the air. Here's the biggie. 0 interceptions. He took care of the ball. Another 11 carries for 59 yards on the ground and a touchdown on the ground. Total QBR rating 73.6. That's a good week for Isaiah Green, to be honest with you, with what's been happening over the course of the last month or so. Brendan Knox goes over 100 yards, 24 carries, 104 yards, and a touchdown. Brock Thompson, leading receiver from the receiving course, 6 catches for 91 yards. And Xavier Gaines, got to mention him, 3 catches, just 48 yards. But, hey, he went 1 of 1 passing for 33 yards and a near touchdown. So yes, cool. It was a good call of the receiver being down at the 1 or the half-yard line or whatever. But, man, that was a really nice run play. And it just goes to show if they get Xavier Gaines involved in several facets of the offense, it proves to be beneficial to the Herd. Defensively, the big day, Tavante Beckett, same different week, same song, it seems like. 14 tackles, 4 solo, half a sack, and 1.5 tackles for loss. Kerryon Morrell, 7 tackles, 4 of those solo, and 2 passes defended. Now, look, here comes. Conference USA Defensive Player of the Week, ladies and gentlemen. Darius Hodge, 7 tackles, 4 of those solo, and wait for it, 4.5 sacks. 4.5 tackles for loss. Those 4.5 sacks tied number 1 all time for single game sacks in Herd history. What a game by Darius Hodge. Look, let's get right into grades because there's only so many stats we can talk about. I really am interested to see, your grades for this team this week. So let's talk about quarterback right off the bat.
Yeah, I'm going to go B+ for the quarterback this week. I think Green played much better. I think everybody can see that he played much better. And if you watched him, he played a nice controlled game. It wasn't anything overly exceptional. It wasn't one of those games that are going to blow you away, but it was a good performance. I mean, he, like you said, a pretty good completion percentage, game manager like yardage, passing, 1 touchdown, no picks, no turnovers or fumbles or anything. So that's huge. That's the biggest single determining factor if Isaiah Green plays well or not, is if he's turning the ball over. And then back-to-back weeks, he's looked really good running the ball. 59 yards rushing, a touchdown on the ground. That's really impressive the way that they're letting him beat teams with his feet. And I think that's definitely something that teams are going to have to scout on more moving forward, the zone read kind of stuff. And, he's really proven to be a valuable commodity running the ball. And I think that's something they got to explore more, open up the offense and the running game more, and it will keep defenses honest. So it's a good performance by Green, so I'm going to go B+.
All right, fair grade, good effort all the way around. How about the offense as a whole? Another over 440 yards offensively. They managed to put points on the board this week. What do you got for the offense?
Yeah, I got B+ again for the offense here. I mean, it was another really solid. It was a solid day. They needed that badly. It wasn't it's the same thing for Green. It wasn't overly exceptional, but it was definitely a solid performance. 31 points. That always helps compared to 13 points and 10 points and 7 points. So that's a big upgrade there. 444 total yards is good. 208 passing, 236 rushing, 8 of 16 on third downs. That was really big. They converted 50% of the third down attempts. 0 turnovers. I mean, that's huge. We know how much that makes or breaks Marshall turnovers. They had none. They were good in the red zone. The only time that they did not score in the red zone was the very end of the game when they need the ball. So the red zone woes from the last week were gone in this one. They scored when they got in the red zone, and in time of possession, they were able to hold the ball a long time, like you said, 36 minutes. So they're a plus 12 in time of possession. So offense really did a lot of good things. It wasn't perfect, and it wasn't like a world beater kind of day, but it was definitely a solid performance offensively and something that they can build on, and hopefully they can keep that going and then some. So B+ for the offense.
Yeah, that's fair. How about defense? I mean, Jiminy Christmas. How much farther do you have to go than saying 8 sacks? I mean, good God Almighty. How about a defensive grade?
Yeah, you said it there. I mean, the sacks were unbelievable the way they got pressured. So I'm gonna go A- for the defense this week, and I'll say why I gave it a minus here in a second. But I mean, they only gave up 17 points, and honestly, only 7 of those points were actually on the defense. And I'll get into that later with special teams. 17 points allowed, 206 total yards. I mean, that'll get it done pretty much any week. That'll get it done. 8 sacks. I mean, good Lord. 4.5 by Darius Hodge. That's the game that Doc said that, he was waiting for Hodge to have one of those breakout games, and that was it. So it's good to see, I remember back in that Gasparilla Bowl last year, you saw some of his potential. He had a really good game, and you could see what he can do when he's playing well. But honestly, his name wasn't called hasn't been called a whole lot this year besides this last game. So it was nice to see him play up to his potential, and I think that's how good he can be. 4.5 sacks in a game. That's the kind of talent he has when he's playing well. So that was good. 9 TFLs was good too. But the only reason I give it an A- is there's a couple coverages, couple secondary issues that were a little iffy. One of Old Dominion's only big plays was a relatively poor job by, I don't remember who it was, but it led to a big long touchdown. But I mean, other than a couple secondary issues here and there, defense did about as much as you could have hoped for. So A-.
Yeah, that's fair. Totally fair. I think no small factor in contributing to that effort this week along the defensive line was the fact that Furman Silva was back in the rotation for the Herd. So anytime you can get a player like that back, that's a huge boost to your rotation and your defensive line as a whole. So here we go. Special teams. Did they get it fixed this week, Trace?
No, they did not get it fixed. They did not get one aspect fixed, I should say. But overall, special teams great. I'm going to go C-. 1-on-1 on field goals, and that was Rohrwasser's career long. So that was impressive at the very end of the half there. It's a nice little 2-minute drive or whatever it was. So that was good. Robert Lefevre had a good day punting, punted 6 times, averaged about 41 yards a punt. That was a pretty good day. But the thing that's been bugging me all the year was bad again. Kickoff coverage, absolutely downright pathetic. I mean, into the first half, Marshall goes up 17-7 on Rohrwasser's career-long field goal. They squib it, which, I mean, Rohrwasser had a couple touchbacks in the first half at least, so I was a little kind of questioning why they didn't just kick it deep and try for another touchback. But like you said jokingly in the text, they didn't want to give a big return, so they squibbed it. And, of course, Old Dominion takes it all the way back nearly into the end zone. And then they end up getting 1 second on the clock, and they kick a field goal to make it 17-10 at the half. Awful kickoff coverage. And then another point in the second half, Marshall had another pathetic job on kickoff coverage. They returned it all the way to the +30 or +40, or between those two there, and then that led to a touchdown. So kickoff coverage, good Lord, when is this? Like, I remember last year and year before, I was saying, like, that's by far what Marshall's best at is kickoff coverage. They're so good at that. But this year it has been a huge liability. I mean, I don't get it. I don't understand. If they're just, the personnel is probably different, obviously, than it had been the last couple of years. But like, how can it go from one of the best? I mean, I don't think very many people keep track of kickoff coverage team stats and whatever. But like, I would say they were definitely one of the best in the country at that. And now they're one of the worst in the country at it. I don't get it. So other than that, the special teams really weren't bad. But that was so bad that I have to lower the grade to C-.
I don't think you pay attention to it until you realize your team is terrible at it.
Exactly.
And then you're like, gee, many Christmas. I'll tell you what, I'm not saying that it's obviously not one guy that's making the difference, but who was on the special team, on the kick coverage team the last 2 years that's not on the team now? That's right, Jaquan Yulee. Just a flat wrecking ball, missile, bullet, whatever you want to call him. He accounted for so many turnovers on kick return coverage. Kick coverage, it was kind of uncanny. So yeah, he is one guy that he just had a nose for kick coverage. So, definitely a big loss, but hey. All right. So here you go. Coaching has intrigued me the last 2 weeks, and you finally get off the schneid. You finally get an opportunity to give a halfway decent grade because you got a good effort on 2 of 3 phases, and I'm intrigued again. So what about the coaching effort for the Herd?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes without saying the coaching was much better than it had been. I'm going to go B+ this week. I like the game plan offensively. I really liked the way that they used Xavier Gaines. I had been calling for that the last few weeks. That was actually one of my keys to victory for this game was they need to get him involved. Thankfully, they did. He had 3 catches or whatever whatever you said. I think it was 3, and then he also nearly threw a touchdown pass. Really nice thrown ball. You can tell that he was definitely a quarterback recruit out of high school. You can tell he's got that ability. So that was good. I like that one play they ran with the reverse to Willie Johnson that scored a touchdown. They've ran that. They pulled that out of the bag a few times this year, and it's worked basically every time. So I like that. There's a couple calls here and there I didn't really agree with. I thought was kind of safe and little vanilla, but that's any game. You can't really escape that. I didn't necessarily agree with the squib kick at the end of the first half because, like I said, Warwasser already had 2 or 3 kickoffs for touchbacks. So I was thinking, well, just try to get a touchback and, no harm, no foul or whatever. But of course it didn't work out that way. But that's kind of like a hindsight decision. It's not like it was that big of a deal. It doesn't matter if you squib it or kick it deep there. Kickoff coverage can't suck that bad. So that's not even necessarily on the coaching. But I was a little bit iffy on that one. They were ready to play and they finished strong. So I think those are 2 big keys as well because a lot of times Marshall doesn't come out strong or they don't finish strong. So they did both pretty well. So coaching really did a pretty solid job. So B+ for sure seems fair.
One thing that you haven't mentioned yet, and Marshall scored its first points in the third quarter this game that, over the course of the last 4. We had talked about how abysmal they were coming out at halftime. And, you kind of got the feeling like, gosh, is it going to happen again? Because all the momentum they had with Rowasser's career-long kick, they gave right back on that squib kick debacle that allowed for Old Dominion field goal. And I thought, man, is this a precursor to the third quarter? And it turned out it wasn't. So, I'm with you. I'm going to second guess that squib kick too. You bust it through the end zone or you kick it far, maybe they'll fair catch it. They'll get it on the 25. Old Dominion's one of the worst offenses in the country. So what do you think they're going to do with about 8 seconds? I say they probably just kneel on it and go into the locker room hoping because they don't want to take a risk on a pick 6 or something. So, just that's one I would hope that these, the coaches learn from and don't do that again. So overall, Trace, how about the overall effort for the Herd in this 31-17 win?
Yeah, overall I went with a B. I thought it was, just overall, it was just solid. I think that's the best word for it. It wasn't like exceptional or unbelievable or anything, but it was definitely a solid game. They kind of let ODU hang around a little bit too long, I think. They kind of didn't quite put it away soon enough. When teams let inferior teams hang around, that's when things can start happening and go wrong. But thankfully, nothing went wrong. ODU really kept it close the whole game. They never fell behind by more than 14. They kept it every time Marshall scored, they would score back or whatever. So Marshall kind of let them hang around a little bit, which is what it is. But at the end of the day, a 14-point win's definitely solid, especially coming in with 2 straight losses that they had to get a win. So overall, I think it was a B grade is fair. I think it was solid from all parties except kickoff coverage. I was literally at the point where I was saying they just need to kick it out of bounds because it was that, if they would have kicked it out of bounds, it would have been better field position what they were giving up kicking it deep. So it was horrible. So other than that, though, it was a solid day. So I'll go B.
All right, so here's the big question. What do you know about the Herd, or what do we know about the Herd after 6 games?
Can I say that the kickoff coverage needs to get better?
I don't think you've driven that point quite home yet.
Yeah, I don't think the listeners know how that I need to reiterate that statement. Kickoff coverage needs to get better, But no, it was. I think we know now that Marshall, when they're playing at their best, well, not their best, but when they're playing solid ball, they're definitely a Conference USA contender. It's just the problem is you can't predict when that's going to happen. Marshall's one of the most erratic teams in the conference. You never know what you're going to get from week to week, but when they're playing, relatively good football, then that shows that they can really go out there and do some damage. They have pieces offensively. They have a good run game, good O-line. When Isaiah Green's playing well, he's a good quarterback. They got some young receivers that can step up. You got good tight ends. So, they got weapons there offensively, even if it's inconsistent and sometimes wildly inconsistent. And then defensively, we saw what they can do, what they are capable of doing with the pass rush. 8 sacks. That's huge. So you can see the potential of the team when they're playing well. So hopefully that keeps shining through in the next few weeks because, there's a lot of tough games coming up and they need to keep winning if they want to keep pace in the East. So I think that's what we know so far.
Well, I'm going to tell you what I think I know. I think I know that Marshall will beat bad teams. And
we've done that for years.
But have we? Because they've lost to some bad teams before.
They have.
I'm not saying it's happening, all the time, but they have lost to bad teams before. But about this 2019 team, they have shown they will beat bad teams. They're 3-3 and 1-1 in conference. It's a brand new season for the Herd. They're going to have to at least match that for the remainder of the season in order to hope to get to the bowl, a bowl eligibility. And I know that's not the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is to win the conference and, go to a bowl in that way. But looking at the schedule, they got to go to FAU this week, which we're going to talk about in a minute. Then they host Western Kentucky for homecoming. Then they travel to Texas and play Rice. Then they host Louisiana Tech. Then they go to Charlotte. And then they go to FIU. So they do not have 2 home games in a row for the remainder of the season. The road games are not the toughest in the world. FAU is beatable. I watched a good bit of that FAU Middle Tennessee game, and though the scoreboard said it was lopsided, that was a really boring game, and it didn't really bust loose until the end of the game. And we know that Middle Tennessee is not great because Marshall turned the ball over an abundance of times in order for the Blue Raiders to get that win. So the Herd is going to have to win against Rice because they're a bad team. They're going to have to win against Charlotte, and they're going to have to get one between FAU, Western Kentucky, Louisiana Tech, or FIU to get the bowl eligibility. That's just the meat and potatoes of it. It's going to have to happen that way. Here's something else I think I know. That Isaiah Green is not Rakeem Cato, Trace. He's not going to be Rakeem Cato. The sooner that the fan base kind of embraces that he's his own guy, he's his own player, the better off they're going to be. He's not going to be that well, I'm not going to say he's not going to be, but he's not that quarterback that's going to show up and throw 300-plus yards week in and week out. And he's going to get you 3 to 4 touchdowns week in and week out. Right now, that's not who he is. He's the 175 to 200 average yard. He might bust out for 300 yards. He's good for maybe a touchdown or 2 a game. He could also have that crazy game where he throws 3 or 4. The difference between Green and Cato right now is that Green is having an evolving, emerging run game that's turning into a bigger and bigger part of his arsenal. And I just think that it would do Herd fans a service to stop comparing the two as much as they would like to. Take Green for what he is and the type of player that he is, and, just kind of realize that it's going to have to be more of a team effort. He's not Rakeem Cato in the fact that he's not going to call his own game. He's not going to take over a ball game, and he's not just going to go out and throw gaudy stats right now. Might he do it by the time he's a senior? Yeah, he might, but right now that's not who he is. So that's what I think I know about the Herd. That might be news to you. It might not be news to you, but if I had, I don't even know where they try to steal one. Western Kentucky to me is an interesting matchup because it's at home. And when these two teams lock horns, we know that we never know what's going to happen. So the Herd needs to go on a little bit of a win streak in order to kind of ease the pressure a little bit. And it would be nice to go FAU, Western Kentucky, and Rice before you get Louisiana Tech at home if you're the Herd. So let's talk about traveling down to Boca Raton. Let's go ahead and preview the Herd's game with the Owls. FAU 4-2 on the season, 2-0 in conference, the closest one staring up to Western Kentucky, but they're still not in first place. ESPN Power Index really likes FAU this week, Trace. 69.7% chance to win. The Owls are currently -6. So the Herd's a little bit of an underdog this week. All right. FAU has got their conference wins over Middle Tennessee and Charlotte, so that doesn't blow you away. That's why I say they're fully beatable. And I tweeted it earlier in the week. If the Herd plays sound run defense, at least that's what beat Middle Tennessee, then they have a legitimate shot to beat FAU, even though FAU is more of a pass-heavy team this year. They're averaging almost 130 yards more passing per game than rushing. But it was the rushing attack that took down Middle Tennessee State late in the game. All-time series, Trace, 5-1. the Herd owns the all-time series. FAU got their lone win back in 2017, which was their conference championship season, by the tune of 30-25. And you can correct me if I'm wrong. I wrote down, I didn't look it up. You can tell me if it was 3 or 4, but that was a game that FAU won by 5 points and Litton threw 4 interceptions. So I was right. I wrote down 4. The average score of all those games combined, the 6-game series between the Herd and the Owls, 29-18.5 in favor of the Herd. Now those games in Boca are a lot tighter. Marshall's averaging 27 points in Boca. FAU just 23 points. So these tend to be nail-biter type games. FAU this season scoring just under 32 points a game, 31.8, but they're allowing 28.5. The Herd scoring an average of 25.7 and giving up an average of 25.8. So take that for what you will. This is going to be the battle of the 2018 Conference Co-Freshman of the Year in Isaiah Green and Chris Robinson. So, let's talk about this game a little bit, and then we'll talk about some players to look out for. And then a little later on, I'll get your keys to victory for the Herd. So what do you think about this matchup against FAU in Boca?
Yeah, Marshall playing down there is never really leaves a good taste in my mouth, a good feeling ever, really, because I know how historically sometimes they struggle there. The first time they played there in 2013, think about it, Justin Haig needed to have a walk-off field goal to win that game. And that was when Marshall was a really good team with a high motor, high explosive offense, and they struggled to win that one. And then in 2015, that year in Boca, that was the only really easy game Marshall's had there. They won that game by, I think it was 33-17. That was a pretty good performance there. And then 2 years ago, 2017, that was the Chase Litton 4 interception game where they lost by 5 points. So that's definitely not going to work. So Marshall can't have that again this game. We know how erratic Marshall gets, especially on the road. We know that they always lose 1 or 2 conference games, most of the time on the road that they shouldn't lose. Now, I'm not saying this is a game that they shouldn't lose because they're underdogs. So, honestly, based on the odds, this will be a game that FAU shouldn't lose just because they're favored. But, I don't think there's that big of a difference between these teams, really. I know FAU's got a better record and all that stuff, but, I don't think there's a whole lot of difference. They got some good pieces, but they did lose, obviously, Devin Singletary, who was maybe their best running back of all time, one of their best players of all time. He's, was doing good stuff in the NFL until they got hurt or whatever. So, they're a good team, and Lane Kiffin's got them back on track this year, it looks like, from last year where they're 5-7. So Marshall handled them well last year in Huntington. That was one of the most impressive defensive performances that Marshall's had in a long time, absolutely shutting down Singletary that game. Held him to 39 yards rushing, which is almost inconceivable. So hopefully the defense can have a similar result this game because they're going to need strong defensive play. They're going to need a whole team effort like they always do, but that would be a big way to hopefully get a win or, whatever. So, and in the words of Doc Holliday, again, when you're on the road, you got to bring your toughness and your leadership. So it's got to happen again. So there you go.
Well, you mentioned Devin Singletary, and it is not of any light import to also mention that Kerith White also declared for the NFL.
Yes.
So they lost their top 2 leading rushers, and both of those guys were NFL caliber type backs. And Devin Singletary's up in Buffalo, I think, having a pretty good season. He may have gotten dinged up though, but he was having a pretty good season up to that point. This year, it's kind of all about the passing game. Like I said, they still have capable runners. Like I mentioned, they started ripping off big runs against Middle Tennessee late in the game, which kind of inflated the scoreboard. But that game was tight, back and forth, and weird, and field goals, and yes, this, that, and the other. And it was a baseball score for most of that game. Mm-hmm. But let's talk about some players to look out for. We mentioned that this will be a battle of the 2018 Conference Co-Freshman of the Year. So, of course, we know one of those was Isaiah Green. The other one is FAU quarterback Chris Robinson, the 6'1", 200-pound sophomore, 133 out of 208 on the season, 1,557 yards. Trace, get this, 13 touchdowns through the air, just 2 interceptions.
Yeah.
Man takes care of the football. Running back Malcolm Davidson, the 5'10", 205-pound freshman, 43 carries on the year, 295 yards, 3 touchdowns. That's good for 6.9 yards per carry. And this guy, the next running back's a little bit of a workhorse. Larry McCammon III, 5'11", 200-pound freshman, 76 carries on the season, just 249 yards, but he's got 5 touchdowns on the ground, only 3.3 yards per carry. They've got a couple of tight ends down there in Boca. One of them is a legit NFL prospect.
Oh, yeah.
The other is being talked about as a potential NFL prospect. So let's talk about those guys. Tight end Harrison Bryant, the 6'5", 240-pound senior, 25 catches on the season, 413 yards. For some reason, he hasn't found the end zone, but he's averaging 16.5 yards per catch, which is pretty daggone good for a tight end. He is the leading receiver on the team. The next tight end, John Rain, the 6'2", 235-pound senior, 22 catches for just 138 yards, but he's got 4 touchdowns through the air. Good for 6.3 yards per catch. Now, from the wide receiver position, the guy you're going to want to look out for is John Mitchell, the 6'4", 220-pound senior, 21 catches, 326 yards, 4 touchdowns. That's good for 15.5 yards per catch. Defensively, a couple of linebackers you need to keep an eye on. Rashad Smith, the 6'1", 220-pound senior, 42 total tackles, 22 of those solo, 1.5 sacks, 1 forced fumble, and 2 interceptions. Linebacker, look, I tried to figure this out. I'm just going to go with Achilles or Achilles. I'm not sure how it is. I don't know if that S is silent, but I'm going to say Achilles Leroy, the 5'11", 235-pound junior, 39 total tackles, 27 of those solo, 3.5 sacks on the season, and 1 forced fumble. Now, they got a couple of defensive backs that make some plays, but I was jotting down and way down the depth chart. I had to write this down because this is such a crazy outlier stat. Defensive back, Miko Dotson, the 5'11", 195-pound senior, 7 tackles, Trace. Okay, that really doesn't blow you away at all. 4 interceptions.
Wow.
7 tackles, but 4 interceptions on the season. Leading the team, of course. So I had to write that down. That's just one of those crazy, put an asterisk beside it stats. So with all those guys we just mentioned, let's talk about what the Herd has to do to secure a much-needed win in Boca Raton and go on a little bit of a winning streak in the conference.
Well, first thing I wrote down, I think they need to start fast. I don't think there's any other way about it. I think you got to start fast in this one. You're on the road. You're the underdog. You're the team that's not supposed to win based on the odds in Vegas and all that. So I think you got to start fast, because if FAU starts fast and they get up on them quick, then I think Marshall's in serious, serious trouble, because, I mean, I don't think Marshall's offense is built to make a comeback. So, I think they got to start fast. I think that would go a long way. Hopefully Marshall's on that's jumping out on FAU instead of the other way around. That would be great. So I think a fast start would be huge in this one. Second point is, and I wrote this in all caps, and I think you know where I'm going with this, better kickoff coverage. Especially on the road. I mean, if you go on the road and you set teams up in great field position over and over and over, that's just a recipe for disaster. That's a recipe for them to score a lot more points than they should be scoring. And it happened with ODU, because honestly, without kickoff coverage blunders, ODU really would have only scored 7 points. So Marshall can't afford to have that happen again. They have to have it. It has to be better. I mean, I don't know. There's no other way you can say it. It's just got to be better. It's been an issue all year on and off most of the year. It can't happen again, especially on the road facing a good team. So better kickoff coverage, please. Next point is, I think you got to dial up the heat defensively. They did an excellent job of this against ODU. They were blitzing. They were getting in the backfield. They were really playing aggressive. And I think they got to do that again, because, I mean, Chris Roberson, he's had a good year so far, and he's honestly had a year he's made a jump from his freshman year to sophomore year, the kind of jump that Marshall fans had hoped Isaiah Green would have made so far, and he hasn't made it so far. So I think they're going to have to get in his face, make it difficult on him. Hopefully, I'm not going to go in expecting 8 sacks again, because obviously that doesn't happen very often. But, I mean, even half that would be good. 4 sacks would be great in this game. And just, consistent pressure, pass rush, getting in there, dialing up the heat, that would be big in this one, because I think that would throw off FAU if the pressure gets there and it kind of would throw them off. So that would be a big one there. And my next point is, you got to win the turnover margin outright, not tie it. I think you got to win it outright. And I did a little stat for the turnover issues. for Marshall, especially on the road. Okay, so this is 2017, 18, and so far 19, all road games. So that's a total of 14 road games. And those 14 road games, dating back from 2017 onwards, they have 30 turnovers in those 14 road games. Okay, like that's not gonna cut it no matter how you look at it. That there's no coincidence that Marshall loses a lot of games on the road, but when you're going out and having a total of 30 turnovers in 14 games, that's literally 2 turnovers a game on the road every single game for 3 seasons, 2.5 seasons. That's not going to do it. You can't have that happen in this game, because we saw what happened the last time Marshall played in Boca and had a bunch of turnovers. They lost in a game they should have won. So that can't happen again. There's no alternative here. If they go out and have a lot of turnovers, and if Isaiah Green, has a lot of interceptions or whatever, then they're going to lose the game. So got to win a turnover margin, got to play clean football in that regard.
Well, look, for me, some things are pretty straightforward. Number one, to me, you got to stop the 10-yard cushion. We just talked about FAU as a pass-heavy team this year, and with a quarterback in Robinson that's 13 touchdowns to 2 interceptions, 1,557 yards. I mean, I think that goes without saying that he can pick a defense apart. So there's no reason to give that guy a 7-yard completion every pass, because he'll take it. Number two, I think you're going to have to play your best coverage linebacker a lot of the game. Whenever Bryant's in the game, whenever Harrison Bryant's in the game, you're going to have your best coverage linebacker in the game, and see if he's able to, go man for man with Harrison Bryant, because I don't think a DB is going to be able to cover a 6'5", 240-pound senior tight end that's an NFL caliber tight end. So, that's kind of one of those weird things. I don't know exactly who the Herd's best coverage linebacker is. Hopefully he's already on the field, but, it might be one of those things where you see a guy get a little extra PT this week because Harrison Bryant is such a mismatch. Number 3, you said it. I'm going to say it too. Green's got to protect the ball. You can't go on the road and turn the ball over. You can't have any lost fumbles or fluky plays or crap like that. You just got to take care of the ball. You did it last week. Now you got to go on the road and prove you can do it against a better team than Old Dominion. Number 4, to me, the defensive line has got to get hits and sacks on Chris Robinson. And I'm talking to the tune of 4+ sacks maybe. I don't know how many hits it's going to take, but you got to get, more than 1 or 2 sacks. I mean, the man's 64% completion percentage. He's averaging 11.6 yards per completion. He's not throwing the ball up for grabs. So that tells me that the defensive line and these linebackers are going to have to get to him, or they're going to be in for a long day. He's hitting the open man. His season is showing that. So unless they play solid defense, and like I said earlier, if they play good run defense, they've got a legitimate shot anyway. But they're going to have to get hits on Robinson. There's no way around it. It's going to have to happen. They're coming off of one of their best games ever as far as sacks go historically. So, we're going to need some semblance of that again this week for the Herd to go on the road in a place they play historically weak, and they still manage to win, but, they're always nail biters. But Boca's a weird place. It's not as bad as Murfreesboro, but they're going to have a solid effort. And anytime you're playing a team ahead of you that you're looking up in the standings, this is a game you've got to have. They've got to go prove that they're better than FAU. They have to prove that this week. So all that being said, Trace, who's your 200-proof player?
Yeah, on the topic of tight ends we were bringing up, I think for Marshall this week, Armani Levias is going to have a big game, and he's my 200-proof player. Talking about Harrison Bryant being the leading receiver, even though he's a tight end for FAU, same thing can be said for Armani Levias for Marshall. He's their top receiver, even though he's a tight end. I mean, the guy really makes good plays. I think one of the most effective plays Marshall has that almost always works is those little dump down passes to Levias. It seems like that play, they run it several times a game. Seems like that play always gets 5 to 10 yards almost every time. Like, it always seems like it works. It's just, I actually saw something on my time hop the other day that it said that if I was an offensive coordinator, if I was a coach, I'd throw the tight end at least 10 times a game. I think I would absolutely throw the tight end over and over and over. I would call that because they're such great security blankets. It seems like they're always open. It seems like they always make catches and make plays. And I think Levias is in that mold. I mean, obviously everybody saw his flashy SportsCenter top 10 against Middle Tennessee. That's the kind of plays he's capable of making. I think he's a really solid tight end. I think he's going to have to get involved because we know Marshall's receiver issue this year. I mean, so many guys injured and out, and then a lot of young guys that are struggling at times and struggling to kind of make plays and stuff. It seems like a lot of times when Isaiah Green does have time to throw the ball, like sometimes he'll just stand there and look for receivers, but unfortunately they're not really getting open all the time. I mean, Brock Thompson had a really good game last week, and there's been flashes, but they need to have better, consistent receiver play. So I think Armani Levias at tight end will help that out some, leading the charge. So I'm going to go with Levias for my 200 proof player.
Yeah, that's a good pick. And I got to mention one thing is still we have not seen Obi Obialo on the field. I don't know when he's coming back or if he's going to make it back. But we're getting to the point in the season now that if he misses another game or two and then comes back, he'll be able to play the remainder of the season and still redshirt and come back next year for the Herd. So, we're starting to get in that area where that's a possibility. So if he doesn't come back this week and doesn't make it back for Western, then you're definitely in that area. My 200 proof player this week, I'm kind of copping out a little bit, Trace, but I think it's going to take I can't just go one guy because of the fourth point that I made there, and I'm going with the defensive line as my 200 proof players. I think they may actually end up being the difference in this game. If they get no pressure, if FAU keeps Robinson clean most of the game and just allows him all day long to pass, I don't know that the Herd's got a legitimate shot. I mean, they're going to have good defensive line play to have a shot. I don't think, obviously, the environment will be very hostile. It usually isn't in Boca. I can't really blame them because there's a lot of stuff to do in Boca Raton, Florida, when it's 85 degrees and, I get it, but I'm going with the defensive line. So how about a score prediction, Trace?
Oh, yeah. Fans aren't going to like this one, but I'm always the most realistic, one of the most realistic Herd fans, I would say, even though some people aren't capable of being realistic, honestly. But I'm going to say FAU 31-24, they get the win. So there you go. The reason I say that is because I'm at the point where now I have to see Marshall do it. I don't want to talk about them doing it. I don't want to think they're going to do it. They have to show me that they can do it, as in go on the road and beat good teams. They have to show it. They haven't shown it yet this year. 2 road games so far. They've lost both to Boise State, obviously a good team, and then Middle Tennessee, a decent team. They've lost both those games. So they got to prove to me, they got to prove to the rest of the fans that they can go on the road and win a game like this. I mean, I got to see it before I can call it to happen. That's just where I am with it. Hopefully it's, serves as not that they're listening to this or care what the heck I say, but I mean, hopefully it can be kind of bulletin board material. I mean, they see the odds and they know, that they're underdogs, so to speak. And I seen a stat on Twitter today that's, I don't know, I haven't done the math or looked it up myself, but it said that Doc is 5-23 as a road underdog at Marshall. Marshall is 5-23. So, that doesn't really give me much reason to pick them in this game. So I'm going to say FAU wins, but obviously Marshall's capable of winning. I think anybody with eyes can see that. But, it's like I said, though, they got to prove it to me first because I don't have a lot of faith in them to do it. I'm not going to just say they're going to win to be a homer. I have to see it. So.
Well, first of all, I'm not so sure that there aren't a few players that listen to this podcast.
True.
Second of all, 35-21 FAU. Sorry. I'm with you. I need to see it. I need to see them go on the road against a halfway decent team, which FAU is, and beat them. And I just like I did this week, I picked Western to lose 31-30, and I am not ashamed to admit that I was wrong. I am not ashamed to admit that I sold that Topper run defense extremely short, and they proved me way wrong. And I'm happy to admit that because that means Western gets the win. So in that same fashion, I hope that Marshall can go down and prove me wrong because I'd love to eat the crow next week. When we wrap this episode up, I hope I can come on here and eat the crow. And I say this all the time. It's not an indictment of the players and how hard they work and this, that, and the other. But, this might just come down to turnovers. And if the Herd can't take care of the ball and, they give FAU a short field a couple times, I like Lane Kiffin to be creative enough to punch it in the end zone from, 30, 35 yards out, or, God God forbid, Trace, that kick coverage rears its ugly head and they give FAU a short field a couple times, that's not going to help things. So until I'm proven wrong, 35-21 FAU. Prove me wrong, guys. Prove me wrong. All right, final thoughts, guys. Let's bring Steven back in. Steve, kick us off final thoughts, and we'll start to get the heck out of here this week.
Yeah, I mean, you know me. I try to stay pretty even keel. I mean, I try not to get too high, too low. A couple good victories in a row now, a few good victories. Defense just flexing their muscle. A team that hasn't really blown anybody away. They've beaten the teams they're supposed to beat and lost to the teams they probably should have lost to coming in Charlotte. The revenge game factor, homecoming factor, offense just waiting to bust out. I'm just waiting for it to happen. I'm really excited for this game. I think this is going to be the one. We're going to win. We're going to win big. Sorry, Charlotte. Sorry, not sorry. 4-0 in conference. Get ready.
Sorry, not sorry. Look, I gotta say, you are like the Bill Belichick of podcasts, man. You're like so
on to Cincinnati.
Yeah, that's it. That's right. We're just worrying about Charlotte. We're just thinking about Charlotte. That's it. We're just thinking about Charlotte. All right, Trace, what you got this week?
Yeah, this is a really crucial game for Marshall. I think that if they can go and get this win, then that's going to set itself up for really good things coming up, because I think they're in the position where if they can beat FAU on the road, they could have a chance to go on a nice run. And I think they're going to have that. Obviously, if they want to have a chance to win the East, they're going to have to go on a run. Up and down is not going to cut it. I mean, it just seems like so far, though, that's what we have right now as a team. That's what fans are seeing. They're seeing up and down. So, so I would like to see more consistency. I mean, everybody wants that. That's been a problem, not just this year. It's been a problem dating back several years. But if they can win this game, I think they're setting themselves up for good things. So hopefully they can do it. But like I said, I mean, it doesn't matter what I think. If I think they can win or not, I have to see them do it before I can call it to happen. So it's not anything, I'm not going to be one of those homers that just pick them to win every game or can't see objectivity or whatever. I'm not going to be those people, because quite frankly, I think those people are the reason why a lot of things are kind of complacent with Marshall football right now. So I'm not going to be that. Sorry. So hopefully they can get this win. Obviously that would be huge, but we'll see how it goes. I think it'll be a pretty good game regardless.
It should be a good game, but here's what I'm going to tell you. I'm going to go ahead and start to kind of preview our big game here in a couple of weeks. And by doing that, all I mean is if Marshall can go get this win at FAU and Western Kentucky can hold serve against Charlotte, then we're going to come in the week after next, Western Kentucky 4-0 in conference, Marshall 2-1 in conference, having already beaten FAU, who they're looking up at currently. FAU has already beaten Middle Tennessee State, so that was a little bit of a favor to the herd, because I fully think that Western is going to beat Middle at the end of the season. So this could, if Marshall can manage to get this win against FAU, that's going to set the Moonshine Throwdown up to be a decisive game in the East Division race, like we are used to having that game be. So I need both of these squads to go out and play like they're fully capable of playing in all three phases. Because I really want to show up in Huntington here in a couple of weeks, and Steven's going to come up for the game. Trace obviously is going to be the game. This will be the first time that we're all kind of three together at the same place since we've been doing this show together, and I want to have a lot of buzz surrounding the game this week. I want it to mean something other than it just being homecoming for the herd, or Western just looking to go 5-0 in conference. I need something more than that. I need the winner of this game to be in the driver's seat for the conference. So other than that, I say let's just get out of here this week, and let's hope we can go 2-0 for another week and come back in here, and maybe Trace and I will have to eat a little bit of crow. Steven's just going to continue to ride high. So, so until next week, Steve, take us out.
Go Tops.
Trace.
Go Herd.
We will see you next week. That's the Moonshine Throwdown podcast. Later.